very much for your kindness in doing that. Thank you all for your testimony. I'll just preface my questions by saying I'm a huge champion of the Metro. I was growing up here when it was built, and so I went to my first party on the Metro. I went to my first prom on the Metro, had my first date on the Metro. So I'm somebody deeply invested in its success, and I want to bring it back to its glory days. Let me start with this question. It's been 3 years since Metro cut back the nighttime hours from midnight to 11:30 on the weekdays, and then 3 a.m. to, I think it's 1 a.m. And I still hear from constituents who are working late, you know, at hotels, restaurants, in the thriving, you know, nighttime sector that we have now, for whom this is a problem. What's the timetable or schedule for getting back to the earlier nighttime hours, Mr. Wiedefeld?
Yes, just to put in context, that was put in place to deal with preventive maintenance that we never did. So that was very important. We're making great progress. We will be preparing our budget in next month. We want to get back those hours as quickly as we can, but we cannot do it at the expense of keeping the system safe and keeping to that maintenance schedule that we need to have. So I'm hoping to bring certain things to the table in our budget to start to bring back those hours, because again, that's what we want to do as quickly as we can, as quickly as it's safe to do it.
Good. Mr. Chairman, you'll recall that there was an effort at the hearing that Congresswoman Norton chaired for us on D.C. statehood to essentially justify the disenfranchisement and non-representation of people in Washington by virtue of alleged ethics violations at WMATA and potential political corruption by a D.C. councilman. And to my mind, this transparently political argument depends on theories of guilt by association and collective guilt and mass punishment that are totally antithetical to our notions of individual responsibility and also democratic representation in government. Having said that, we have a responsibility to conduct oversight over WMATA, and the chair, Mr. Evans, resigned from the board after the Board Ethics Committee found that he had knowingly violated the WMATA Code of Ethics. He apparently lied about his work on behalf of private clients, and the subsequent ethics investigation into his self-enrichment. As troubling as his behavior was, we are also focused on the complete breakdown in the transparency and integrity of the board's own ethics process. So what I'd like to understand today is what happened and how that process became so dysfunctional, and how the reforms recently adopted will prevent similar problems from happening again. Mr. Smedberg, I'm going to run through some of the lapses in the ethics process as I understand them, and then ask you to explain to the committee how the new reforms address them. First, there was no report or timely statement issued at the end of the investigation to let the public know what had transpired and how the board planned to address Mr. Evans' actions. How did this happen, and how did the reforms address the problem?
Congressman, the Ethics Committee came to a determination, and we determined that the issue was resolved, and that was allowed under the current code at the time. But myself and other members of the committee realized that that was not probably good for the organization and the board moving forward.
And not good for the public.
And the public, that we needed reform and we needed greater transparency. And that's why I pushed for the reforms and had full support of the board. And as I said in my opening statement, I outlined some of the key things. I think a couple I want to highlight again. First, all conflicts will be referred to the IG. The IG will then make a determination whether it was a violation or not. That written summary will be public, will be discussed by the board and acted on by the board in public. So that is, direct attempts to address a lot of the concerns that you and a lot of other people have had.
Several of the members, including Mr. Evans, made false statements in public about the adjudication of the investigation and its contents. How would your reforms address and prevent a repeat of that?
Again, I think having the IG report out, bring the report to the board in public, and having the board discuss whether there was a violation or not in that written summary in public, I think will help address.
Okay,
again, a
and
lot of-
finally, I can get one more in here. The subject of the investigation apparently threatened and intimidated staff to influence the outcome of the Ethics Committee process. How would the reforms address something like this from happening?
Well, I think they're, again, sending things to the IG for independent review outside of a committee process where staff was involved and helping organize things, I think is going to go a long way. And again, reporting out to the board in public with a written summary. I think, and that's our attempt to address that issue.
I appreciate that. My time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I thank the